Good evening, everypony. My voice is ready, so let's not wait and begin this episode of FIM Fiction Roulette, a series where I go through the annals of FIM fiction, take a random story and a random chapter from within said story, if applicable, and read it aloud for all of you to hear. I had a really nice time at MayorCon this year. Always a blast and lots of really good panels. The achievements definitely made me want to participate more in chat rather than my normal lurker behavior. Team Coco sadly lost, but we had a good fight. I'm sad the con is over, but now I get to go watch the recordings of the panels I missed, so at least I can stave off that post-con depression a little while longer. So before I get comfy with some of those recordings, let's get into our next story. Looks like a human in Equestria getting superpowers, but it's not all it's cracked up to be. Also with tags like narcotics, gore, and death, it really sets the tone that this could get ugly real fast. As always, we'll start with the introduction and then head into our selected chapter. We're only skipping the prologue today as we got Chapter 1. Without further ado, this is A Technological Displacement by Tenebrous Lucifer. Have you ever wanted superpowers? Or for a chance to escape your reality? Maybe both. But let me tell you now, sometimes power comes at a price. For some, the price is too great. To others, they would give anything for the ability to become virtually anything. Until they realize too late that it wasn't worth it and have to live with it. This is one of those tales. Chapter 1. I open my eyes expecting the usual sight of my bedroom ceiling, but instead I find myself looking at a clear blue sky. I laid there for what seemed to be an eternity until eventually the memories of what happened flooded back. But for some reason, I didn't panic. Instead, I was calm. Too calm. But I would ponder that later. Getting up, I see I'm in a rocky area. Next, I looked over myself. I have my steel-toed boots on, with my old jeans, a black short-sleeved shirt, and my bleach hoodie. It comforted me, seeing my usual outfit, but it also brought confusion, as I wasn't wearing any of this before I was knocked out. But I did find something in my pocket, a letter that might help me understand the situation I'm in. I started to read it. Greetings, Mr. Morningstar. I would like to congratulate you upon successful displacement into the lands of Equus. Now I'm sure you're very confused, so let me get to the point. You participated in an omniversal experiment known as the Power Lottery Challenge. You chose the experimental tier, which has a fatality rate of 70%, as most people are unable to handle the power of it should they get an omnipower or something of the like, but I digress. The powers you rolled are as follows. 1. Eldritch Being Manipulation. This ability allows you to easily form contracts with eldritch beings along with using their powers and knowledge. Side effects such as insanity will still affect you. This even extends to slaying them and so on. 2. Intelligence Infinitum. This skill gives you the potential to develop an IQ of infinity, though, as I said, it's only the potential to, so you must train it by learning things. 3. Transcendent Science. This ability allows you to make technologies that would allow you to do the impossible, though you will need to increase your intelligence in order to use it to its fullest potential. Because you have these powers, here's a word of advice. Don't interfere with our operations, as it can and will lead to your death. The Scientist. This letter answered plenty of my questions, but also raised just as many, if not more, such as, why was I chosen, and where the hell am I? But all these questions wouldn't help me in the short term. Looking up at the sun, I determined that it was about midday, and from the colors of the forest below, it was sometime in late spring, early summer. Going back to the area I woke up, I searched for anything that I may have missed. A backpack or maybe some food. I didn't, but I did find something even more valuable. My machete. My chances of survival increased drastically. Attaching it to my belt, I started making my way down the cliffside, which in itself was a feat from how steep it was. After getting down the cliff, I was completely exhausted from the climb down, but I needed to find shelter, so I forged on into the nearby woods. It was only a couple of hours of walking before I found a suitable place to set up camp. An old tower, not unlike the ones depicted in old fairy tales and D&D campaigns. What confused me was why I didn't see this place from the cliff. Shrugging it off as me simply missing it, I knocked on the door and waited, only for no one to answer, so I knocked on the door again and again and again, to no avail. So I attempted to open the door, and to my surprise it was unlocked. But once I did, I could understand why no one answered the door, seeing as there was a skeleton pinned to the wall with a rotting spear. This brought up the question of what the dominant species of this planet was, as the equine in question did have a cloak and wizard's hat on. But that was a question for later, as I started climbing up the spiral stairs, passing a couple floors, one of which looked suspiciously like a ritualistic sacrifice room. But what I found on the top floor was something even better, a workshop. Possibly for magic, as there were cauldrons and beakers everywhere, as well as a dusty workbench with tools. Picking one of them up, I could tell it was untouched by time, perhaps because of the strange symbols engraved into the head and handle. Deciding to study them later, I went ahead and put it down and started to explore more of the tower. The tower was quite impressive. So far I have discovered a personal study with plenty of books, what seemed to be an overgrown garden, an exquisite bedroom, albeit slightly dusty, and as I suspected, a ritual chamber. It goes even farther down, but I don't trust the lower floors, at least not until I can protect myself. Going back up to the study, I take down one of the books, and unsurprisingly I can't read it, but flipping through the pages, I do come upon something that I can somewhat understand. A pictogram of a magic circle, by the looks of it. Though I don't know what it does, I do recognize one of the symbols, though. It was a sign for eldritch magic. I had recognized it because I had been enamored by the otherworldly for a while, though what the magic did I did not know, but I might be able to figure it out after some study, but I was tired from today, so I went ahead and headed off to bed, because, after all, there was always tomorrow, right? Classic isekai fantasy, getting crazy superpowers after you die. Can't really judge the whole story just off this. Not really much to work with here. It was kind of funny for the letters sign off to be the scientist. Like, there's only one? Also, I don't think IQ is tied to just learning more. But maybe I'm mistaken. And there's probably some sort of magic in there, so yeah. Now, if I were transported to another dimension, but, and this is a very important but, I did not know it was a different dimension, as how can you tell such a thing, or, at the very least, that this dimension is on a vastly different track of reality from our own. My first assumption to a horse skeleton in wizard clothes, smited by a spear long ago, would be someone put the clothes on the horse after it was dead. Not that it was the dominant species of the realm, rather it was just a horse that was killed. Sure, I'm reading an MLP fanfiction. We can do a bit of suspension of disbelief here. But, I don't think horses would really use normal human polearms. Maybe lances attached to their saddles might make sense, but I think common weapons for MLP ponies would not be unwieldy long sticks they'd carry with their mouths. You may respond, oh, well, it might not be unwieldy for a unicorn, and I would reply, certainly, but then why even have the pole part of the polearm? Just use the point, or better yet, use magic. As I say this, I do realize that there may be times a spear might be better to use for a unicorn, sure. But my points follow as A, I firmly believe that the polearm would not be common, at least without heavy alterations that would make it more useful for non-magical ponies. And B, that if I were to find a pony skewered by a spear, dressed up or not, would not assume solely based off of this information alone that pony life may be the apex of the land. But what's your thoughts? Do you agree with my sentiment, or do you have any counterpoints? This was a chapter from A Technological Displacement. Thank you, Tenebrous Lucifer, for making such a wonderful story. The link will be in the description below. And thank you, listeners, for joining me on this exciting adventure. This is Open Air, signing off. But don't worry, I'll be back soon with another FIM Fiction Roulette.